Hello and welcome to Rando Rob. Each week on Rando Rob, I'll be showing and discussing one item from my large collection of collections. New shows appear every Monday, and throughout the week, I'll be adding older episodes of Rando Rob that were previously only available to my Patreon subscribers. You can watch episodes of Rando Rob on YouTube at youtube.com/Rob O'Hara. Just look for the Rando Rob playlist. Audio versions of the show are available on my website at podcast.robohara.com or through iTunes. Just search for Rando Rob. Thanks for watching or listening, and I hope you enjoy this vintage episode of Rando Rob. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rando Rob. It is October 25th, Tuesday. It is my lunch break. I am in my home office that obviously needs cleaning. I'm wearing a stupid hat. I think that gets everybody up to speed. This is not a hat that I normally wear. I bought this hat about a year ago because I saw my neighbor outside wearing a big sun hat while he was working in his yard, and I was like, I want a big sun hat. And so I went on Amazon, and instead I bought this bucket hat, which I never wear. But I was just cleaning my desk yesterday, and I found this hat, so I decided to throw it on today. Man, I hope everybody is having a good late October. It's gearing up. It's going to be Halloween next weekend, next Monday, right? Monday is Halloween. Now I have to look at my calendar. I believe Monday is Halloween. Yes, Monday is Halloween. We got a note from our HOA that says we've decided to do trick-or-treating Saturday night on the 29th. That is a pet peeve of mine. I've told this story before, but there was a year where when my son was younger, he was 7 or 8, they had a dress-up thing at school, at his school, and he went to that. Trick-or-treat wore his costume and went to that, and then his daycare had an event where they dressed up and they trick-or-treated at work, and they did that, and then he went to haunt the zoo and he trick-or-treated at that, and then they had an event at my local high school where you could go haunt the halls, and you paid money to go in. Actually, you didn't. The admission was a bag of candy, and you gave them candy, and then they just distributed the other candy that people had. And then when Halloween came, he said, I'm really kind of tired of trick-or-treating. I don't need any more candy. And I said, you get your butt out there and you get you some candy because it's Halloween. That's how it works. So I'm okay with doing all these other additional things, but they are additional. That means in addition to. That means the original stays there, and those are on top of that. So if you want to also go do trunk or treat or whatever, great. I mean, if I were a kid, I think that's awesome. If you're a kid, how excited would you be to say, I got to trick-or-treat 9 times this year? That would be so awesome. But you don't get to do that instead of Halloween. So I'm a little irritated that my neighborhood has declared Saturday trick-or-treat day, because then I know on Halloween I'm not going to get any trick-or-treaters, which is kind of a bummer. I'm going to wheel the 12-foot skeleton out to the front of the house on Halloween, or I guess on Saturday now, so people can see that, which is a pain in the butt to do, and I don't want to do it twice. I also ordered it's a 30-watt LED spotlight, but it says the equivalent of 300 watts of color-changing LED spotlight, and I've ordered that. It says it's indoor-outdoor waterproof. I want to put that to where it shines on the skeleton, just in case there's a few neighbors I haven't irritated yet with a 12-foot skeleton. So it's all good. I love the Halloween season. We just went to Spirit Halloween and bought some coffee mugs, some Halloween coffee mugs. I got one with all the retro monsters, the old Universal monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, all those guys are all in one mug, which is pretty cool. So anyway, I posted on my blog, I believe this was last week, or I believe it was the week before, that Judy Tenuda passed away. Now, Judy Tenuda was not everybody's cup of tea. She was, and I head's itchy under this hat. It's ridiculous. I've been itchy for 24 hours. Not itchy, but paranoid itchy. Because I took my trash bins out, and we were out of town last weekend. So we didn't get to take the trash out. So my trash bins have been sitting there for 2 weeks. And yesterday when I pulled them back up, I noticed that one of my bins was full of maggots. And I touched the spot where the maggots were. And so for 24 hours now, every time I feel an itch, I look and I go, is that a maggot on me? Is that a maggot? So I'm so grossed out by it. And I have not found any maggots on me at all. I mean, I searched my hand immediately and there wasn't anything on me. But mentally, my brain keeps saying, make sure that ain't a maggot. So anyway, I posted on my blog a couple weeks ago that Judy Tenuda passed away. Judy Tenuda was a female comedian. She hit it big on HBO. There was a specific special called Women of the Night that had up-and-coming female comedians. Judy Tenuda was one of the ones on that special. Rita Rudner was one of the comedians on that special. Ellen DeGeneres and Paula Poundstone. I believe that was the four comedians. And that was the first time I'd seen any of those women. And they were all funny in their own right. Ellen DeGeneres had a really funny stand-up. That was, and Paula Poundstone, that made me a fan of Paula Poundstone for life. But Judy Tenuda was the one that really at that time stuck with me because she just had that, like, you know, when you're a teen and there's that sense of humor where people are just doing something funny and so they're just doing something odd maybe or out of the normal, so you take to that, and she was that kind of comedian. A lot of people compare her to Emo Phillips, and it turns out that she and Emo Phillips got married. Now, it's very difficult to find information on their divorce. All I can find on IMDb is it says they were married for a short period of time. It almost makes it sound like the marriage might have been annulled and that they didn't get divorced, but I believe they got married in 1988, and by 1989 they were definitely both single. So the marriage, for whatever reason, did not last very long. But I think Emo Phillips' comedy and Judy Tenuda's comedy were somewhat similar in style and tone. Judy Tenuda, like a lot of comedians, was doing a character. Emo Phillips was doing a character. Pee Wee Herman, you know, Paul Reubens, that was a character. Elvira, who's been in the news over the past week, that was a character. And so these performers are not necessarily the characters, and there are a lot of performers that are known for doing lots of characters. Like, if you think of someone like Adam Sandler, he did lots of different characters, but whenever you become famous because of a single character, you know, Andrew Dice Clay he was that guy. People said he was that guy. Now, if you saw interviews with him or saw him in real life, he wasn't necessarily that guy, but when he was on stage, he was that guy. When you see Pee Wee Herman in the gray suit and the bow tie, and he's wearing everything, and he's in the Pee Wee Herman costume, he is Pee Wee Herman. The same thing for Elvira. And so Judy Tenuda was one of those comics where she did a lot of different things, but she became known for that persona. Now, when I was a little kid, and then I'll get to the rando item here in just a moment, but when I was a little kid, the first comedy albums I was really exposed to were Bill Cosby's. Now, I know Bill Cosby in the 70s and 80s is different than Bill Cosby today. We don't view him in quite the same light. But as a kid in the early 1980s, Bill Cosby was a comedy genius. And my mom had probably 7 or 8 Bill Cosby albums. And I listened to them to the point where I knew them all word for word, beat for beat. So when I would get on the bus and someone would say, you know, what are you doing? Then I would start doing those bits, but just doing the entire thing. Someone would say, like, I mean, and I haven't listened to these albums in a long time, but I remember he would, there was a whole bit about how he had gone to college to be a phys ed major, and he was dating a girl who was, I think, a psychology major, and she asked these questions. She says, "Why is there air?" And he goes, "Well, I know why there's air, to blow up volleyballs, blow up basketballs. I know why there's air," that sort of thing. And then all these bits about, playing football and building go-karts and just all these things. And I memorized them. So I would perform them like on the bus or to my friends and just do it word for word. It wasn't like I was at that point doing my own comedy or my own jokes. I was just repeating his bits. And I every kid does that. Every kid, we all grew up. If you're my age and you had basic cable, then you had HBO, and then you watched Eddie Murphy, Delirious. And everybody either knew that kid on the bus or was that kid on the bus. I was that kid. There was another guy named Brian who was that kid. But, anytime they'd say, "Hey, you want some ice cream?" And then you would break into Eddie Murphy's bit. "I got some ice cream. I got some ice cream, and you can have none." And I mean, you just were doing someone else's comedy, but it was funny because their comedy was good comedy, and now you were just regurgitating someone else's act. But anyway, so I discovered Judy Tenuda, and this was right around the time that I got my job at I think the concession stand, which, if I get around to it, is the next episode of You Don't Know Flack. I'll be talking about the concession stand. But I got this job where I was making cash every week. On a regular week, I would take home $60 cash without no taxes, and they paid me cash. And then if there was a tournament on the weekend, I might make 100 or more. And this is every week for a kid with zero bills. I had no bills, no obligations, nothing. And I'm just making, $60 to $100 a week. So it added up in a hurry. And I started going to the music store where you could buy tapes for $5, or there were places that had used cassettes that would be $3 or $4, and I would load up on them. And so not long after I saw Judy Tenuda perform stand-up, I found Judy Tenuda's tape. Now, I want to talk very, very, very briefly about my old cassette collection and my modern cassette collection. When I was a kid, I had one of those brown cassette holders that hung on the wall that held 100 cassettes. And I filled that up with cassettes, mostly store-bought, but also cassettes that I had taped off the radio. And then I got to the point where that was full, and I bought a second one of those, and I filled that. And then I got some little portable, little plastic cassette holders, and I had some in there, but not too many after that. So, I mean, I probably, in my heyday, had 250 cassette tapes, give or take. Then I got this. If you weren't there, you may not be familiar, but they had briefcases. It looked like a briefcase, and it held 30 cassettes, 3 rows of 10 tapes. And so you would take this thing and carry it with you to your car, and then you open it up. Now you've got 30 tapes. You thumb through, find the tape you want, put it in your cassette player, and then you're off and rolling. So I had that with 30 tapes, and then I got a extremely large one of those, which was double-sided. So it was this kind of padded bag, almost that you carried over your shoulder, and it held 30 tapes per side. So it held 60 cassette tapes. So my 60 favorite cassette tapes were always in my car. I had all my Metallica, all my Motley Crue, all my really favorite cassette tapes were all in this thing. And then what happened, inevitably, is one night someone broke into my car, they smashed my mirror, they stole all my stereo gear, my radio, my speakers, everything. I had installed an aftermarket car alarm, and they cut the alarm and then stole my alarm. I mean, that is adding insult to injuries. They stole a guy's car alarm, and they stole that thing with 60 of my favorite cassettes. And so this was right around the early 90s. This was probably 92-ish, 91, 92. And I was already making the transition to CDs. But I was the guy, I was not going to buy Metallica's Master of Puppets on CD if I already owned it on cassette. But I guess, I mean, if you want to look for a silver lining, you would say someone did me the favor of stealing my 60 favorite cassettes. And now when I replaced them, I started buying them on CD. And so that was really when I made the transition from cassette to CD. After that, I didn't buy any more cassettes after that. So what's my cassette collection look like today? Well, there was a resurgence many years ago, a return of popularity for cassette tapes, nostalgia cassette tapes. And for a long time, cassette tapes were worth less than $1 each. I mean, if you got a quarter each for cassette tapes at a garage sale, that was a good deal. And then all of a sudden, a lot of these cassette tapes started going back up in price. So I had, for example, a collection of 3 or 4 Metallica cassettes. I had some cassette singles, and I had a couple other random Metallica tapes. I put them as a bundle on eBay, and I got like $30 or $40 for them, which was great. Because cassettes, to me, I'm not nostalgic about physically holding a cassette. I enjoyed cassettes. I liked cassettes. I owned cassettes. I loved cassettes. But we all know that cassettes are not the best medium for storing and delivering music. They will warp over time. If you leave them on the dash of your car, they will melt and warp. They can get stuck in your cassette player. They can, be broken and ripped out and all these things, and they will wear out over time. It's an analog medium where something is touching it. They will wear out. They'll stretch. There's all these weird things that happen to cassettes. So, I might say that I'm nostalgic towards the idea of a cassette, but I'm not nostalgic about cassettes themselves. And so when there was a market for them, I sold all the cassettes that I could on eBay. What I saved was a small, very, very small collection of cassettes that I was nostalgic about. Now, I would say, as I look through these here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's a couple of loose ones here. Sorry. I have to see what this one is here real quick. Oh, weird Paul. I would say most of these are local bands, and these tapes are irreplaceable. Now, you could say that any cassette tape is irreplaceable, right? But let me pull out this first tape here, just showing you one. This is a band called Forte. Now, Forte is a local metal band here in Oklahoma City. This was one of their very first, I think this is an EP, before their big, they had some bigger albums come out. So when I was in college, I got a gig working for a local music magazine. I went and did some interviews of local bands, and I ended up interviewing the drummer of Forte, who unfortunately has since passed away. And so I had their big album at the time, which was called Stranger Than Fiction. I interviewed him about the album and about how they were in the local music scene, what they were doing. And he asked me if I had their earlier EP. I said no, and he gave me this tape during the interview. He held this tape, handed it to me, this actual tape. So that's where I got this tape. It was from the drummer of Forte. And so I haven't looked on eBay. I don't know. But my guess is there may be some Forte CDs on eBay. There are probably no Forte cassettes. So I wouldn't even know where to go get this. You're not going to find local cassettes really in pawn shops anymore around here. So, I mean, if this physical thing is gone, it's gone forever. I don't know how to replace this. So those are the tapes that I have here in my collection. Here is a band, a local band, that was called Ancient Chinese Penis. The name of the album is Envy. I went to a local, I think I talked about this on one of my podcasts, maybe on one of the local music or a music or concert. I think it's on my concert, You Don't Know Flack, where I talked about I went to a college concert. This was in a house. This party got out of control. Ancient Chinese Penis was the headliner. People were painting ACP and drawing pictures of penises in spray paint on the wall of this house. And then the bass player kept reminding everyone that this was his boss's house and he was supposed to be house sitting, and we were destroying the house. I mean, I say we, the hundreds of people that showed up at this house party. But I think I bought this tape at that show. I might have bought it the week after at a local place. But again, where are you going to find an Ancient Chinese Penis tape other than my house? So those are largely the tapes that I have here in my collection. There's Oil Filter. There's Pitch Black, which is a local band. But there are two tapes right here, and I'll share one of them with you because it's so ridiculous, and it's not really the Rando Rob item that we're building up to. But many of you probably remember, if you're of a certain age, you probably remember NWA, the rap group that had Ice Cube and Dr. Dre and Eazy-E, all those guys, Yellow Boy, DJ Yellow Boy, and MC Ren. Anyway, NWA was a big thing, but they got a lot of they got tons of backlash. First of all, because they talked about killing cops. That'll do it. But another thing that, because they were kind of, many of their lyrics were not kind or sensitive towards women, which is about the most gentle way I can put it. And so anyway, I heard about this band, which was HWA. And so this was a Hose with Attitudes, which was the opposite of NWA. And the name of this album is Living in a Hoe House. And I don't know why I saved this tape of all that, because there's so many of the tapes I just got rid of, tapes that I enjoyed much more. But I always just thought this was a funny tape, and this just kind of is a remembrance of that era. So a lot of these tapes are more than just the tape itself. It's kind of like memories, or a bunch of memories that go with it. But anyway, at the bottom, at the very bottom down here, is Judy Tenuda's album, her first comedy album, which was called Buy This, Pigs. She used to do these bits where she would call the audience to call the men pigs. In her first comedy stand-up performance, she saw a man in the audience looking at her, and he says, "Oh, this guy's looking at me." And then she spits her gum out into the audience and says, "Crawl for it, pig." But anyway, so that was kind of one of her catch lines, was calling the audience pigs. And so this, during that era, became my new, if you will, Bill Cosby type record. Now, I think for me, this really predates Sam Kinison, and it predates Andrew Dice Clay, who lots of people listen to those in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. But I think I had this one first. And so I listened to this nonstop. When my friends came over, I would play this tape. When I was in my car, I would play this tape. I played this tape nonstop, to the point where not just I knew every comedy bit and every, again, it's hard to explain. It's not that I knew the jokes. I knew the timing. I knew I could repeat the act with Judy Tenuda. Like, every word, if there was a pause, that's how I would repeat it. So I would do her act exactly as she did her act. And she had insults to some of the people, in her stories that were funny insults, And then I tried to work those into my conversation and my daily speech. And, I don't know that any of that ever worked out in any sort of benefit for me. But, yeah, I ate this tape up, man. I listened to this all the time. Now, Judy Tenuda appears in one Weird Al video. She went on to star in like, not star, appear in like 20 movies, and she's always a weird character. She's in a movie called Butch Camp, which is like, it was basically a training camp for like cross-dressers and stuff. She did a lot of that type of comedy that didn't always click with me necessarily, but maybe her more mainstream stuff appealed to me in her earlier material. But I will say this: I have watched a couple of interviews with her. There's an interview that I linked to in my blog post after she passed away a couple weeks ago, and she's just an absolute nice person. And again, I mean, if I were to list my top 10 comedians, would Judy Tenuda be in that list? Probably not. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was a thing of its time. So I don't want to try to sell this and say like, oh, she was a mentor, that she was a big inspiration to me. Not really, but I just do remember having such good times listening to this tape. And again, being that age when you're impressionable and you listen to comedy and you just start doing the comedy with the tape, just repeating it over and over. And that's kind of what I remember from this tape. So, I don't, like I said, this is the only, my personal tapes. These are the only tapes, physical tapes that I have left. Now, I will say that I bought, years ago, a really nice dual deck cassette player, like one that would be in a rack stereo. And I ran that into my sound card, and I digitized, whatever you want to call it, all my old cassette tapes. So I have cassette tapes. I mean, I probably have 24 that I recorded off the radio from the 80s. That was really my big radio era. And I have all those as MP3s, so I can listen to them at any time. And I even, when I digitize those in, I put the physical cassette on my scanner and I scanned in the labels, so I can actually see the pictures of the cassette tape. But they're starting to wear out and they were getting old, and I just didn't have a need to keep the physical thing as long as I had the music and the memories that were on them. So that's what I did with all my tapes. Now, Susan has a plastic tub with 30 or 40 tapes from her childhood that all have radio stuff included on them, and I have not digitized those, but that's on one of my projects to do probably next year, something I'm gonna try to get to. So there may be some more treasures to find in there, but really what I enjoy is hearing the DJs and the radio bits that I grew up listening to. And so that's, for me, that's where the nostalgia is. So Judy Tenuda goes back in the cassette holder that goes back up on my shelf. But that is really, that's one thing we can check off, because that is the entirety of my collection of cassettes. Those are all my personal cassettes that I own. Not video cassettes, because we got a lot of those. But audio cassettes, that's it. So I've got a You Don't Know Flack that I've already written and I've been sitting on. I haven't really gotten around to recording. I've got some other stuff I need to do, and then I'm doing my best, but I'm limping along towards the end of the year. At the end of the year, I'll be making some changes to podcasts and schedules, and we'll see what things hold. But for now, I'm trying to keep things on track. So we'll definitely have some output this week, and I will talk to you guys soon.